Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We have a draft lottery. We have a draft order. The Atlanta Hawks spiked all the way up to number one, and they are, I think, the only team that I had not considered in any way, shape, or form had a chance to jump all the way up to number one. So we're going to talk through everything we just saw with the 2024 NBA draft lottery, and maybe at the end, we will give you a quick updated 2024 NBA mock draft. But first, let's hit the music.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Way downtown.
Bang! Bang! What is this going to be? Wow! Are you kidding me?
Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. But if you watch the tape, what you will see completely orchestrated this game. Bryce, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Sam? Hey, before we get going, I want to take a second, wish a happy Mother's Day to everybody out there, all the mothers. And I use that as a term of that goes beyond just what we usually think. Anybody who's out there that's been a female influence in your life, help take care of you, raise you, whatever that looks like in your life. Shout out to them. Make sure you text them, call them, tell them that you love them and appreciate them. I know I appreciate all of those women in my life very much. And I wanted to start off the podcast with that.
Shout out to my mother, Michelle. Shout out to my wife, Laura, who raises all of our beautiful animals at the very least. So yeah, it's great. I love that you started there, Bryce, but let's jump in and let's talk about this lottery. So we've got a draft order now. The Atlanta Hawks will be selecting at number 1, the Washington Wizards number 2. The Houston Rockets spike all the way up to number 3 from the number 9 spot. And the San Antonio Spurs will be selecting at 4. That means Detroit falls to 5, Charlotte falls to 6, Portland falls to 7, and San Antonio gets number 8 from the Toronto Raptors. Now, when you were watching this, I assume that your mind immediately, kind of like mine, just went, what in the world is going on when we have both Atlanta? I see Utah go to 10 and I'm just like, oh my God, what just happened? Because genuinely, what I said in the intro, I mean it. I feel like Atlanta is the one team that like I had not really truly considered as potential to jump up to number 1, because Atlanta, like, it just doesn't happen for Atlanta on some level. You know what I mean? Like, this never happens. And of course it happens in this draft, obviously, where it's the draft that nobody wants, number 1, right? But I hadn't thought about them, and my mind started racing in terms of where does this go? What do the Hawks do? Do they keep the pick? Do they select somebody? Like, how do they go about handling this? Because they're in a very complicated position this offseason with Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, obviously coming off of a disappointing season. I have no idea where this goes. I have an idea of where it should go, but like in terms of what I actually know, like for some teams, I have a feeling on what they're thinking, right? Even if I don't necessarily know for sure. With Atlanta, you talk to teams around the league, and they were one of the teams where it really felt like teams weren't entirely sure what their plan is totally this offseason. So I'm truly fascinated, but what was your thought as you saw the lottery come down, Bryce?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. We all get on Tankathon and we do the spins. And whenever somebody like the Hawks or the Rockets with the Brooklyn pick or the Jazz, one of those teams goes to number 1, you're like, oh, that's not really going to happen. Let me spin it again. Like, let me get something more realistic. And then you get to this. Like, here's the thing, Sam, you know how you generate interest in a draft where it's quote unquote a bad draft and no excitement at the top? You take this team with a 3% chance of getting the number 1 pick and you give them the number 1 pick, and you take the Rockets, who had a 5.2% chance to get number 3, and you put them up. And I'm not saying that's what the NBA did. Like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Like, I have no idea like what the theory would be that you give the Hawks Alex Sarr or whoever, whatever. So I'm not saying that. I'm just saying like this is generating a lot of buzz all of a sudden. Like, I saw people tweeting, I'm not interested in this draft lottery at all. It doesn't matter, whatever. Well, Pistons fans are pissed. Hornets, all of these people, Blazers fans aren't happy. And Hawks fans are going, holy crap, we got to figure out what's going on at the top of this draft, because now we need to figure out who is this Alex Sarr guy, because I bet they hadn't even thought about it.
Yeah, really. I mean, so I think that we'll talk about what they should do maybe momentarily here. The other team I want to talk about is Houston spiking in the way that they did, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Houston, I think, is a big winner here because you look at Houston's group of younger players, right? And they have a lot of these wings. They have a lot of these very talented, athletic, marvels, kind of like Amen Thompson, Cam Whitmore, certainly Tari Eason, right? And then you look at their guys that are starters and have emerged already. Alperen Şengün, certainly Jalen Green took a big leap in March this year and looks like a potential player for them moving forward finally. Jabari Smith, obviously, they took 3rd overall a couple of years ago in the NBA draft. Them getting a chance to be a team that actually isn't beholden as much to the teams above them now in terms of what falls to them, I think is really important, because say that they just like have a super high grade on certain players, right? Say that they really like Steph Castle or something like that because they want to go super big and they think Steph Castle can be a point guard. I'm spitballing here. I'm not saying they think that. I'm just saying that, who knows what they think, right? And they're looking for a long-term future option behind Fred VanVleet. Say that they like Nikola Topic.
I say, what about just Topic? Like, Topic is a big point guard.
Exactly right. Say that they like Reed Shepherd, right? I think that they could really, really end up with like an awesome point guard here. Say that they really like Donovan Clingan.
I was gonna say, yeah.
They just traded for Steven Adams at the deadline, right? Which says to me that they like the idea of having a defensive stalwart behind Alperen Şengün at the very least. I'm not saying that, this is like some incredibly viable pick necessarily, but that's what I currently have mocked to them at the Athletic. I have Donovan Clingan to them because it says the Adams trade said to me that they want a defensive stalwart behind Alperen Şengün. And with Şengün's extension kicking in after next season, having like a really cheap option there who you think can come in immediately and be like a backup defensive big is actually like really important, I think.
And he can pass. He's not Şengün passing, but we've talked about this. We think one of the underrated skills of Clingan, so you can do some of, even if it's 50% of what you do with Şengün. You don't have a complete negative passer at that big man spot.
I think that's totally right. I love the idea of him fitting within their core at a really, really high level. The other teams that win here, Washington and San Antonio is a massive winner because they end up with 4 and 8. They get the pick from Toronto that they had, I believe, a 53% chance to get coming into the event. Huge, huge win for San Antonio now from an asset perspective. They could try and package those picks and move up. Like if you're Washington and you have number 2 and San Antonio just absolutely loves one of these guys. Yeah. Washington just kind of needs assets on some level. Like they need players who are younger and who are interesting. If San Antonio like is absolutely in love with one of these guys, and I'm not saying that they are, I don't know necessarily, you could easily move 4 and 8 to get up to number 2 if you think that one of these guys fits utterly unequivocally the best with Victor Wembanyama. I probably wouldn't do that. I'd probably just take as many shots at the apple as I can, right? Just take as many bites at it as is possible. But I think that now they just have a lot of options on the table. And oh, by the way, the trade options here are very real. Say Atlanta decides that they want to move in like a totally different direction. Could San Antonio decide they package 4 and 8 for something like Trae Young or DeJounte Murray? Say that they want to go package, 4 and 8 for a star. That's like a pretty good starting point for a trade package if they want to immediately move into a different echelon of team because they think Victor Wembanyama is ready. San Antonio is a massive winner here.
Well, and what I'll say is I kind of like right now I have a tier break around 9, 10, something like that. So even though we don't think this class is amazing, right? And we'll continue to talk about this and all of that. But if you get 2 bites at the apple in that range, there's a like we know somebody good's going to come out of this class. Multiple players are going to come out of the class, even if it's a little harder to pinpoint who those guys are. Or like at 4, what if Risache falls to you at 4, right? We've talked about this, him being a little bit lower because of the last month and the way he shot the ball and those. And then at 8, take your swing on Dillingham. You have 2 picks in the top 8. Maybe you can do that. You go get your 3-and-D wing, stretches the floor, all of that. Now take a swing, and then maybe you don't feel like you have to package these and go get someone. And I think that's interesting for Washington as well, Sam. If I'm the Wizards and I want a big, like let's say I'm not excited. I think at 2, maybe I would just take Topic if I was them right now. They need a point guard. But let's say you don't think that somebody's going to take Klingon at 2 or 3. Maybe you are the Wizards, you trade back, you wanted Sar, you don't get him, but now you can take Klingon at 4, and then you can take the swing at 8 for whoever that is. So I think it does. Again, this is what is exciting to me about this class. Last year, the lottery didn't matter in terms of whoever got 1 was getting Victor. So it was exciting for that fan base. And whoever was 2 and 3 was going to take Brandon Miller or Scoot Henderson, or if you were 3, you were getting the other win. Like it just, there's so many more possibilities we can play out. Like even the Hawks, like, are they going to take Sar? And if they are, then that means we're getting some sort of trade with Capella and or Okongwu this summer. So I just love all the different ways things could shake out still.
The other big winners of this class, in my opinion, are actually the point guards that are in this draft, because the teams that ended up in the top 4, Atlanta obviously doesn't need a point guard, but Washington needs a point guard.
Yes.
You can easily say that if Houston, after having been around Amen Thompson for a year and playing him essentially on the wing or like as a 4-man, occasionally as like a small ball 5-man, if they're a little bit less sold on Amen, like completely running the show long-term, like again, like Reed Shepherd, like makes a ton of sense next to Amen Thompson long-term as a point guard, right? Like you can put those 2 together. That's like a really, really fun backcourt pairing, right? Number 4, San Antonio, like obviously needs like a real point guard at the end of the day. So they have 4 and 8. I don't know, man. Like I think that the point guards probably ended up rising up the board in a real way in this class. Whereas it could have gone a different way where it was more the wings that ended up a little bit higher.
What I'll say though is if you don't get taken 2, 3, or 4, I don't think Detroit's taking 1. Charlotte's not taking 1. Portland's not taking 1. We talked about San Antonio, right? So like one of those picks, but then you get to some teams that maybe aren't as inclined. So one of these guys could fall a little bit lower, but you're right. I think whether it's Reed or Rob, depending on your cup of tea, Nicola, whoever it is, I think those guys are going to end up a little bit higher than maybe they would have otherwise. If you think Steph Castle's a point guard, that's not what I project him as, but I get it. Yeah. Like there's worlds where maybe he's your quote unquote primary initiator. So yeah, I think you're right there but again, the Wizards could go a completely different direction at 2. We're like, I would take Topic, but you're telling me that they need a big. So are you telling me that Klingon's not in play there? Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have intel at all, so I don't know, but there's a world where that could happen, I would think.
Yeah. I think that you can very easily make a case that that Washington could take a big if Sar is off the board at 1, they just take Donovan Klingon and just decide, look, we need defense. Like we were a god awful defense last year. We need somebody who can come in and really create like a positive atmosphere defensively for us. So I'm totally with you. I think that makes a lot of sense. The big losers here, I think Toronto has to be on the list. I will say that throughout the process, I have been of the opinion that you're going to lose a pick either this year or next year in all likelihood. From kind of talking around the league, my impression is that Toronto wanted this pick. They wanted the pick to not transfer. They preferred to have it.
Interesting.
Now, to me, I think that I probably would have preferred the pick transfer at 8 this year, as opposed to, I think they might be like a top 10 team again next year, to be honest with you. Like
top 10 draft team. Yeah.
Top 10 draft team. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather like 8 transfer this year than number 10 next year transfer. I think number 10 next year is in all likelihood going to be a better player than number 8 this year, or at least a higher tier of player, whatever you want to call it. So I don't know that I consider the Raptors losers, but I think that they will very strongly be considered losers of this entire thing. And the other team, Detroit obviously falls what, 4 spots, 5 spots, whatever it was, down to number 5.
Yep.
And that's, to me, that's okay. Like, obviously, I'm sure Detroit would have loved to have had the pick, but like, it's not the biggest deal in the world to me that they end up falling in a draft where a lot of the guys at the top on the wing have shooting questions. They're probably going to end up with something similar now to what they probably would have gotten at number 1 anyway.
I think the thing it takes off the board is all the Alex Sarr talk, obviously, right? Like that was the big going to be, if they would have landed at 1, that would have been the big conversation. Do you draft Alex Sarr? Do you play him with Jalen Duren? Do you move Jalen Duren? Like at this point, I think a lot of that conversation is off the board. Now, again, I think, Donovan Clingan is going to come into play with that, but I still think they end up with Risacher or Buzelis, someone like that. I personally don't think Ron Holland makes a lot of sense for the Pistons, but he is talented. So you're going to have some options there. So I still could see them ending up with Risacher or Buzelis, who I think would have been very much in the conversation if they would have had the number 1 pick. So
yeah, like the only way that this, I think, turns for Detroit where it could go poorly is if both San Antonio and Washington take 4s, because what have we heard throughout the offseason with Detroit, right? They really want like a 4-man, like that's their whole goal. They want to find a 4 to be able to like create balance within their lineups.
They need it. Yes.
They really need it. Buzelis and Risacher, like they both really tick that box. And I think there is a pretty real chance one of those 2 guys gets to number 5. I do think Washington and San Antonio both could look at those guys. And look, like we don't know what Atlanta is going to do. Yeah. Atlanta could love Modest Buzelis for all we know. Atlanta could love Zachary Risacher for all we know. I think Alex Sarr makes the most sense for them at the end of the day. And Washington, like Alex Sarr definitely makes the most sense for them. Like I would be surprised if Alex Sarr got beyond 2. He's a winner of this entire thing.
Yeah.
Because he ends up, kind of sliding up the board here in a way that I think is valuable. It creates a floor for himself, really. But I am just fascinated to see what all of these teams do here at the top with all these wings. And then like Memphis at number 9, like they ended up falling 2 spots. Utah falls 2 spots to number 10. Portland falls 3 spots. Charlotte falls 3 spots. These teams that like really sucked this year did not get rewarded on lottery night.
Good. Like that's the way it's supposed to be. I mean, listen, people are probably like, I've already got the text messages from different people like, oh, are you upset? I'm like, I'm not really a fan. Like I talk about the team for like, I have a podcast to do that. And so I don't get overly emotional about it, but I'm like, it's just like when you're not very good, sometimes this happens. And I know it's frustrating because it's happened back-to-back years. And even the year before, they didn't have the worst record, but they dropped to number 5 as well. But there's guys there. There's going to be guys to take. I think for Detroit specifically, I think what would be tough is if Sarr, Risacher, Buzelis are all off the board. And then it's like, where do you go now in terms of, okay, Steph Castle's really interesting, but can he shoot? Klingen's a big, but where does it Reed Shepherd spaces the floor better than anybody. Is 5 too high for somebody like Dalton Connect? If that's really what you want. So I think it could get interesting there if all of those guys are off the board. And then, Portland is another one, dropping to 7. I brought up with Memphis to you, and maybe Clingan wouldn't have got there anyway, but we've just mocked Clingan to Memphis so many times. And how many teams have we already brought Clingan up in this conversation? Is he going to get to 9 now? Are they a trade up candidate? Like, do they look at Clingan and say, this is a guy we really need? Do they have some of these extra wings on the roster? I don't know their pick situation in the future specifically. Could they go up with somebody? I don't know who somebody is and try to get to Clingan. Maybe Detroit punts. Maybe all those guys are off and they say, hey, let's trade back to 9 and take Connect at 9 and maybe get some other wing on Memphis's roster and a future pick or something like that. I don't know. I always look for those type of options as well.
Yeah, like I think trading the pick is even more on the table now for Memphis, to be honest with you. Like I think that would make a lot of sense to me if they could find like more of a veteran guy that can help them kind of take that next step. Because look, David Griffin said it like last week in a big way whenever the Pelicans were eliminated. The West has never been stronger.
Yeah.
I don't think it's like the easiest thing in the world to just expect that Memphis goes from, struggling with injuries throughout this entire year and, dealing with everything that they had to deal with, with guys coming in and out of the lineup, and then just getting John Morant, Desmond Bane back into the lineup, getting Marcus Smart totally integrated into this scheme, and them just spiking back into the top 3 of the West like they were the 2 years prior to this. There are a lot of teams that are great now. Like they need to actually make a move, I think, to be able to do some things in that respect. So, all right, Bryce, do you want to just get into doing a mock draft now?
Yeah.
And we'll kind of talk through all of these teams and kind of go with it that way.
Yeah, I think that helps kind of navigate and focus in the conversation. I think we've bounced around and given our overall takeaways quite well so far.
I think so. So if you're here, hit the like button on the stream. Hit the subscribe button on the YouTube channel. There are a bunch of you here. It's great to see it. I love it. I'm so glad we're going to do a ton of great draft stuff throughout the next month and a half. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You're going to get a lot of great content, some interviews with prospects that I've banked already, a bunch that I have forthcoming as soon as I finish the draft guide, hopefully this week. Hit that subscribe button, go to The Athletic, keep me employed over there. Go support Bryce's show. He has a Pistons podcast coming up here in like an hour and a half. I don't know what they're going to talk about. Okay. Let's do it this way. I think you and I, maybe we'll pair to come up with the right pick for each team as we kind of go through this, right? Instead of us doing the normal thing where we go back and forth and try to dive deep one way or another, right? Let me create a mock draft simulator while we're talking about Atlanta. And then I'll be able to get up a graphic on the screen for everybody to see.
Okay.
But start with Atlanta. I think you and I are in agreement that if they decide to use this pick, Alex Sarr makes the most sense, right?
I would agree. I think even before they had this pick, let's say they stayed at, I think it was 10 where they were supposed to be at, or 11, whatever. If Klingon fell there, I was thinking, hey, could this be a spot for Klingon? Somebody like that. I am just of the mindset that this is probably Clint. We have seen the last of Clint Capella in Atlanta. So I think that would make sense to bring in the heir apparent. I don't know how Atlanta feels about Okongwu and if they think he's at that high level of a starting center or not. I think Alex Sarr makes a ton of sense. I will say this. I do think that there's a spot on that roster for sure to play off of Jalen Johnson in terms of Matas Buzelis, Zachary Risache, and you could draft those guys at 1. My thing is, I just have Sarr as a better prospect, and it's like a half a tier higher than those guys. And so I don't see any reason to overthink it or anything like that. I think the fit makes sense. You need to save some money anyway. Move off Capella. I have no idea what any sort of return would be anyway. So if you are feeling Alex Sarr, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of pushback from me on this one.
Why do you think Alex Sarr is a good fit with Onyeka Okongwu?
You mean playing together?
Playing together or separately?
I don't know that I see them playing together. I think maybe my thing would be Sarr comes in and ends up being the guy and allows Okongwu to kind of stay in this role off the bench where, they'll play some minutes together. Here's the thing, Sam. The reason I have Alex Sarr number 1 is the defense and the way he moves and all. I believe in the offensive upside. I think this archetype is extremely valuable in today's NBA. I'll be honest, I started some 2025 stuff and I turned on Malawak. Am I saying that correctly?
Common Malawak, yeah.
Common Malawak, and I'm in love. I love.
That's fun because you and I will disagree on him a bit after having seen him at Hoop Summit.
Okay, I love it. But I just value that archetype so much. So I think Alex Sarr will get there offensively. I saw some people saying he's a perfect ball screen guy with Trae Young. I would push back on that a little bit. I don't know that Sarr's has proven to be this rim gravity lob threat, all of that the same way, the way you would think based on the way he moves.
The way that Okongwu can be.
Exactly. Would you agree with that?
So shout out Pimperon18.
Yeah.
He asks, is Sar a 4 or 5 in the modern NBA? I think he's going to play a lot of his minutes at the 4 early in the NBA. I think that those two will probably end up playing together. And it is kind of why I like the fit
Okay.
of Atlanta early, because Onyeka can take on a lot of those big bruising physical matchups. But there are times where like guys will just shoot over the top of Onyeka because he's a little bit smaller for a center, right?
Yep.
Having Sar be able to come over from the weak side and letting Onyeka like kind of deal with some of those bigger bruising physical bodies, I think would actually be really useful for Alex Sar early in his career. And then you can downscale. You can play Sar at the 5 some minutes. You can, obviously play Onyeka at the 5 without Sar on the court. I think it gives you a few different options that really work for me in terms of ground coverage, court coverage, everything like that with Atlanta. The other thing that you brought up with Sar in terms of like partnership with Trae Young, partnership with what Atlanta is building, I kind of like the idea of Sar and Onyeka together as well, because like you said, exactly right. Sar is not some crazy rim runner yet. He gets like kind of bumped off his line at times. He's a lot more of like a pick and pop big.
Yeah.
Right. He's a lot more of a guy that is going to kind of slip or ghost a screen and then just like kind of get to the perimeter, get to that above the break 3-point shot. I think he's going to shoot at some point. I'm not going to sit here and say it's going to be from day one, but I think that he will shoot it at some point. And if there's a thing that kind of works with Okongwu as a big man who can protect the rim from the weak side, it is kind of like a floor spacing spot up 7-footer who can come across, protect the rim, swat shots, do things like that. And then also run some really fun, like double drag actions in transition, right? Because Okongwu and Sar both run the court really well. You could get some crazy fun actions with Trae Young, in my opinion, where you have these guys like Sar slips the first one, Okongwu dives to the rim on the second screen, right? Okongwu goes quick and, he's the first screener and dives because most teams switch that first screen action, right? And just gets past the opening man. I think that there are a lot of really fun actions that you could do with Alex Sar there. Final point here with Atlanta. The trade option, I think, is going to be like a real conversation point, at least. Because they have Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, both of whom seemingly want to win immediately. I would bet you that they at least gauge the market and see what this looks like. I wonder if there is a move out there, but I also wonder if this is kind of the time to maybe look into like a real rebuild and like move one of those guys. If you want to rebuild around Trae, great. If you want to rebuild around DeJounte Murray, great. This is like a real chance at like an organizational reset at number one, even if we don't love any one of these guys. I think I would almost go that way as opposed to like trying to execute a bunch of win now moves. How do you feel about that if they decide to get involved in the trade market one way or another?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of that. I've just kind of set my mind on one of those two guys getting traded, and I don't know that getting the number one pick, I guess for me, it kind of reinforced it, right? Like, hey, whichever one you're going to move on from, at least we're adding the number one pick, Alex Sar, a guy that in this class I can get excited about, very excited about, to be honest. And so I'm bringing him in now to play with whichever one of these guys. I guess I hadn't considered the angle of, do we just keep them, trade the number one pick for whoever that is that we can get, and try to move forward with that. I don't know that I would go down that path. I think this reinforces, move on from Capella, move on from one of those two guys in the backcourt, whichever one you deem is makes more sense, and then build this out around that person, Jalen Johnson, Alex Sar, Okongwu, especially if you think it really fits. And you have a few other wing pieces and youngsters that you got to figure out who works, who doesn't.
Okay, just a couple other questions here from Seasons and Sloan. Is Sar the kind of number one pick who goes there regardless of fit? No, in my opinion. I think Bryce likes him even a little bit more than I do.
I do. I would say I'm as probably about as high as anybody on Sar. And I think part of that, though, is, Sam, the reason I am a little bit, I still say no, but I'm even as far into it as I am is because I don't even know who the second best player in the draft is for me. Well, I think it's Topic now after watching some more film recently, but I still think there's a decent gap between him and the next guy. But I would still say no. I think he's not 100%. He's not in a tier by himself. That's the best way I can say it.
Okay. I agree with you for what it's worth. And I don't have Sarr as a tier 1 or 2 player. Personally.
Yeah.
I have him tier 3. He is a guy that, and by the way, like the last 2 drafts, I've had 9 tier 1 or 2 players. So like, I'm not stingy with these grades. I just think Sarr is a little bit more of a project on offense than what people think. Go ahead.
I was just say real quick, when I just say tier, I don't do what you do. Like I just am talking for this draft. Like I don't have like a tier. When you say tier 1, that means something. You've labeled that as whatever, like Vic got his own, last year. But when I say tier, like when Alex Sarr is in my first tier, I'm just saying in this class, he's the best player in that tier with Topic and all of that. So I wanted to be clear with that.
Yeah, and to be clear, like I do not have a tier 1 or tier 2 player in this class for Lex Zone 6, who asks. I don't. I like Alex a lot. I think he's a really talented player who could be like a very high impact defensive player. And I think the offense has some real ceiling, but I think the offensive ceiling is a bit more questionable than what it might take him a lot of time, I think.
Sure.
Okay. Let's put Sarr to Atlanta. We didn't really mention any other options for them. Like, I think Ricochet is like potentially on the board. I think that, certainly if they like Modest, like you can make an upside case for Modest. I mean, I don't think they'll take Topic. I don't think they'll take Reed. Steph Castle, maybe if they just really want like another high-end perimeter defender, but I don't know if Steph makes as much sense with DeJounte being there. Obviously, Rob Dillingham doesn't make a ton of sense. I don't think they'll do like Dalton Connect at number 1, obviously. And then, I mean, maybe Klingon. Like, it's not implausible that Klingon could go 1, but I don't know. When you signed a Kongwu and you have Capella, I don't know that you'll want to do that. Daniel Garrett asks, what website do we use for the
great question, Daniel?
Shout out to Fanspo. We're using Fanspo.
Yep.
For the draft thing. If you're watching over on YouTube, which you should, by the way, hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. You'll get to see Bryce and I talk through all of these things. Okay. Washington at number 2. Again, I think this is probably Alex Sarr's floor. If you made me bet at number 2, because this is a team that was horrendous on defense last year, and Alex Sarr would make a ton of sense for them. They finished 28th in the league. Atlanta finished 27th in the league. Going to get a high-level defender makes a ton of sense in this draft. For Washington, you could look kind of any direction, I think. They could look bigger wing. I think that's probably the one that is like least likely.
I would agree.
With Denny Avdia and Bilal Koulibaly there already, and Kyle Kuzma, of course.
And I like Corey Kispert. Like, I know he can play a little bit down the roster, but I like that group of wings forwards.
And this is a good spot to go get a big or to go get a guard.
Yep.
The guard names here are Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd, and Nikola Topic. I personally, after having done a bit more of like the Topic Red Star tape that he's been putting out recently.
Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's a little bit closer between him and Reed than what I initially thought.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm struggling a little bit. This is a side tangent for like another Topic conversation, but I'm struggling a little bit with the mega system in terms of, I do think that system is built for one guy to like really get off right now, right? Like Nikola Jurisic right now is averaging like 19 points per game. He has a negative assist turnover ratio. So like, he's nowhere near Topic. Like anybody that like thinks Topic is like in the same class as Jurisic is like driving me crazy. But like,
is that a thing?
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it. I've seen people start to rank like Jurisic as a first rounder, and I think that's like
I'll be honest, I moved him up my board, but that was moving him up into the mid second round after having him much lower.
Yeah. Yes, but I'm struggling a little bit with the system for Mega, where I think it's like all built around the guard and like the guard can go. But like I also think that Topic's passing and ball screen playmaking, it actually shows up well compared to a guy like Jurisic, who does not like pass at a super high level. He's much more of a scorer, right? So that piece of it was good. I think the Red Star tape has been up and down, I think is what I would say. He looks very effective as a passer and playmaker, and he's playing with like EuroLeague guys. And obviously, he's not going to start for this team because they're an incredible team. But I go back and forth, I guess is what I would say in comparison to like Reed. I know I'm getting high level shooting. I know I'm getting like a connector in some level. I think that like the ceiling and floor conversation with Topic is a little bit wider than what I may have originally thought.
Interesting. So I would say for Topic actually is number 2 on my board right now, because I just have bought into the passing and the creating so much. And then if he figures out how to really score it or shoot it or whatever, like that's just icing on the cake for me. And this is a guy like we talk about modern NBA. You're talking about a 6'6", 6'7". What do you think he's going to measure? You think he's 6'6"? Legit?
I would guess he'll measure probably 6'6". Yeah.
So like you're talking about a lead initiator at 6'6". There's a little bit of shooting touch. Like there's a little bit to buy in there, but the pass, like I kind of had forgotten how good of a passer he was until I watched a recent game and his eye manipulation and all of those things. Good size. It's sick. I think where I'm at with Reed is I don't think I buy into Reed as much on the ball as maybe others do. Like I see Reed more as kind of a combo-y guard who probably needs to play in a starting lineup off a primary initiator, but could run your second unit. I don't know that I buy into him like breaking down the defense as much as others may. And maybe I'm not giving him enough credit there. The other one, like I'm going to throw this name out. Like Washington could use a scorer. They're not going to be able to account for the defense. Like, is Rob Dillingham in this conversation for them? Like, this is a team that could really swing for the fences, Sam, because I like Bilal, I like Denny, I like Kuzma, I like all of these guys. They don't exactly have like superstar upside in the way you may think that Rob Dillingham could, at least on the offensive end.
Oh, if you believe in Rob as like an offensive player, I think that it would make a ton of sense to like really go for it. And I do think Rob is going to be a super high level scorer. And I liked more of what I saw from the passing this year than what I'd seen at lower levels, like at OTE, right? I think that his ability to dynamically create at speed with the ball in his hands will translate in the NBA on some level, right? If I'm Washington, I can't do it because of the defense.
Yeah.
Like I can't have Jordan Poole, if I'm going to re-sign Tyus Jones, Kyle Kuzma's defense
and no center there, like no center to protect unless you like, you know what I mean? Like I was just throwing the name out because I know, like I can hear Wizards fans going swing for the fences.
It's a reasonable point to make. And like, honestly, if they took him, I would get it more than other teams doing it, I guess. I would take Topic over him for the size reasons, for the passing playmaking reasons. I think they just need somebody who can go out and like make plays for other dudes. Man, should we have like a Klingon conversation real quick here? Like, I think they need to take somebody. Like, if I'm them, I'm not trading this pick.
Yeah, no, I think Klingon. I was a part of a mock where this scenario played out. Whoever took Sar at 1, I don't remember who it was. Yeah. And then somebody took, Klingon number 2 for the Wizards. I think it's a conversation. I will bury the lead. I would take Topic here because I think they need a point guard. He's the second best player on my board, and that's where I would go. But I think Klingon is, again, a very, very reasonable conversation when you consider the defense, a need for a big man, all of those things. If you tell me Klingon's higher on your board and this is where you want to go, like I'm not going to argue with you.
I agree with you on this. I think we're going to go Topic here.
Okay.
I think that they have a number of different options that they will likely look at through the pre-draft process though.
Yep.
Okay.
Love it.
Houston is at number 3. Look, we talked about this at the top of the show. Houston has any number of potential avenues on their plate. Like they could go any direction. I think that they really will just take the best player available. Beyond that, I think they want to try and win. Like, I think they want to try and take a leap into like playoff contention next year. And I think that honestly, like, might be the most important piece of what their decision-making process is. I would almost like, I don't know this. This is me speculating. I would bet a lot of money that this pick is on the trade market.
Sure.
Because they will look for any type of significant upgrade that makes them like a playoff team next year. And then they can just get the internal growth from guys like, you know, Jalen Green taking a leap. Hopefully the March leap was real. Alperen Şengün continuing to grow. Jabari Smith took a big leap this year. I thought he was awesome. You know, Amen Thompson will get better. Certainly. He was great late in the season. Cam Whitmore looks like a real dude, in my opinion. I think that they will probably explore that market even more than other teams would.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense for them to go out. I mean, I think they're going to do that no matter where the pick was. So my thought is, as you're talking about that, my mind initially goes to two different guys, Sam, Reed Shepherd and Donovan Clingan. Like, those are the guys I'm like, these are the two guys. Positionally, it makes sense. The floor spacing with Reed, we already laid out the argument for Clingan off the bench. And it's just the two. I mean, I guess there's an argument here for Connect as well, but Reese Shea, I think, is it going to happen right away? Matas, like, I think I'm just not sure with some of those guys. I think those two guys fit into the world you just described better than any of these other guys that are left on the board at the top.
I agree with you. The thing that I think that they need most or needed most this year was a backup center. The second thing that they needed most this year was a backup point guard. I think that both of those two guys do really possess traits that will be able to help them take another step moving forward, or like pretty close to immediately. Like Reed Shepherd's shooting would be like pretty lethal with Alperen Şengün in like dribble handoffs and things like that. If you put Donovan Clingan behind Alperen Şengün, you'd have 48 minutes of great center play. You'd be able to mix and match in different ways depending on different teams that you play. I think both those guys make a ton of sense. Let's at least like have the wing conversation.
Okay.
Riza Shea is something they don't have a lot of outside of Jabari Smith.
Sure.
But they played Amen Thompson a lot at the 4 last year. I think they feel pretty good about having somebody like a Tari Eason certainly move down to the 4 and play there. I don't think him and like Modest and frankly, like maybe Ron Holland probably don't make a ton of sense there. I think they're probably going to try and prioritize defense and shooting.
Yeah. Well, that's what I say. Like, I'm just not sure where those guys come in and play minutes. And for a team, like, I guess there's an argument, like maybe that's not what you need to prioritize here. But I think what we both think is, if you think there is someone here at 3 that can come in as a rookie and contribute to us winning basketball games and find minutes, save us from having to go out and find another player. If Reed can come in, space the floor off of these guys and play some minutes as the backup point guard behind Fred VanVleet, and then maybe grow into the Fred VanVleet role. I'm not saying that's who he's going to be, but you grow into that role 2 years from now, when you don't want to pay Fred that, amount of money anymore. That almost makes more sense to me. Like, I will be honest, this is higher than I have both of these guys on my personal board, but this is this draft. Like, I'm not even breaking my first tier here by talking about these two guys. So I just immediately went to those two because none of these other wings seemed like even Steph Castle. Like, I know you're a little higher on Steph than me. I actually moved him up my board after watching some more tape over the last week. But I don't even know that I love what he makes sense here either. Yeah. So I think it's Reed or Donovan for me.
Should we have the Dillingham conversation as well?
I don't like it at all. I know some people who really like it.
I don't think it makes a ton of sense to have him and Jalen Green if you're going to continue to build with Jalen.
100% on that. If you're going to move Jalen, I'll listen to the conversation more.
I agree. I think it's one of Reed or Klingon as well, if we're going to mock this. Trade wise, like, I don't know how much I want to like dig into like the actual potential trade, like exact deals necessarily. I mean, if I'm them, like obviously you try and offer number 3 and something for Mikal Bridges.
Oh yeah.
I think that you try and offer, number 3 and something for, if you could find like a real younger long-term like point guard that could grow into the role after Fred VanVleet's contract expires. I think that you could make a case there. Maybe you could try and trade number 3 and Jalen Green or something for a star player, right? It's just really hard to like come up with those deals on the fly right now. And I don't want to like totally dive into the whole weeds on that.
Yeah.
Which one do you think is most likely?
I want to say Reed is more likely. Because they like, okay, let me ask you this. Because I've had people tell me they don't think they traded Steven Adams to play. They thought they traded for him for the contract.
I think it was both, for what it's worth. I think they really wanted to stay over the cap or over the salary cap this summer in order to be an above the cap team, have access to their mid-level exception, have access to a few different things. But I think they also think Steven's going to be able to play. And my impression from like everybody I've talked to is Steven Adams like is going to be able to play. Like there's no, like the injury thing is going to be clear by the start of next year.
So I have Klingon higher on my board. That's what's the hold up here. I actually think Reed makes more sense for them. I have Klingon higher on my board though. So I'm struggling between the two.
Let's go Reed. Screw it. Let's go Reed.
Okay.
Right. Like, let's just go crazy here. Reed Shepherd, top 3 pick. I think he ticks more boxes. And like, you don't know how often you're going to get up again in the top 3. I know they have access to these Brooklyn picks, but like, if we think that their biggest long-term need is point guard, right?
Yep.
Because you have Şengün, like, on some level, Klingon is kind of a luxury. And you can find bigs on the market who are excellent. Like, if you wanted to, like, you could try and go out and like get off of some money and like go offer Isaiah Hartenstein like big money if you wanted to, right?
Yep.
So to me, Reed is like a little bit more of a rare player that ticks more boxes for them. So I think Reed maybe.
Yeah, I mean, my big holdup with Reed Shepherd is the on-ball defense. Like, how much do I think he's going to be able to hold up?
Yeah.
And so for any team I want to mock him to in the top 5, it's like, can they insulate him in that way? That would be my biggest worry here is they don't have that rim protecting big. I love their wings, right? Like Tari can really guard. I think Jabari took a step forward defending. Dylan Brooks, Amin, we talked about Amin really being able to guard. So I think I'm cautiously optimistic the wing forward room is good enough to insulate Reed's defense. And like, hopefully Reed's able to make up with some of just straight up getting beat on the ball with the hand activity and the disruption and all the things we highlighted all year with him.
Okay. Let's go with Reed, maybe. I'm like going back and forth now because Klingon. Pick one. You pick one. I'm okay with either.
Let's go Reed. Like you said, screw it.
Okay.
Let's roll with it. If we do it again in a week, we may go somewhere completely different. Okay.
Next up, we have got the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs can literally go any direction here, in my opinion. They have Jeremy Sohan. Yeah, they have Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, all these dudes, right? Like they have some interesting young players around Victor Wembanyama, but I think they're just playing, to try and get, guys that fit around Victor and make sense. Like, I think that you're taking best players available, or you're looking to try and like potentially move these picks for like guys who can help you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree. They can go anywhere. Klingon would be interesting. But again, like he could be your backup for a while. Like you could play him in Vic. I mean, this is what's special about Vic, right? Is he's so good. The defense of that would be interesting. It would be a nightmare for offenses trying to score on those two guys on the floor together. It put Vic back in that off-bar roamer role, but whenever it's Klingon playing in the ball screen and drop, it's not going to be as hard for Vic to roam and get to things he needs to get to. I think wings make sense. I already brought up the idea of taking Shea or Buzelis or somebody like that, and then trying to wait at 8 and take Dillingham there. I think they could really come out of this draft with a couple very exciting players, like the duo of what they could end up with here. It may happen with what we're doing right now. So I think this is it's kind of an exciting situation for the Spurs to add around Vic, or package these picks and go get a star and really build this thing out.
Totally right. The other fun piece of this is trying to like think about the board behind them, right? So
yes,
Detroit at 5. I mean, like, we don't think they're a chance to take Rob Dillingham, do we?
No, I know where you're going with this. So yeah, let's play this out. No. No.
Okay,
bro, it's the Pistons. Like they don't even have the decision maker in place. Like it could, me and you could be getting hired for that job, Sam. Like who knows?
Oh boy. I don't know. I don't know if that's one that I want. Charlotte at 6 has LaMelo. I don't think there's any way they take Dillingham.
Portland's not taking Dillingham.
Portland has Scoot. I don't think they're taking Dillingham. They also have Simons. Like they have a lot of these guys. So if you're San Antonio, what you could do is you could take the bigger wing at 4.
Yep.
And then you could be at 8 and, probably end up with Dillingham at 8, or you could spike up to number 6 from number 8, right? And use some asset to spike up to number 6. Like who did that last year? Washington did it last year where they moved up from 8 to 7, gave Indiana a couple of second round picks, and Indiana was like super happy with that, right? They got extra assets, got the guy they wanted anyway. San Antonio could basically try and block a trade by doing that, right? To get Dillingham.
Yep.
So to me, that probably makes the most sense, is to do the bigger wing at number 4 and then use number 8 to take Dillingham, be it at number 8 or trying to like slide up the board to do it.
Yep. I like that a lot. I think it makes sense for them to look at those teams behind them and feel like they could wait at 8 and get Dillingham there. I would go, unless it's Klingon, which as I talked about that, I kind of drew myself into it a little bit. I think I would go with the wing here. Shea is the top player on my personal board. I'm assuming he's not on yours, so this will kind of be an interesting conversation. I would go Shea here because of that, and I think he just makes sense. Take this 3-and-D wing here, and then I'll go get Dillingham at 8.
So Castle's the top guy on mine.
That's what I figured
at this point. The reason that I'm like a little bit lower on Castle here is that they have Devin Vassell, who more of like a patient driver, kind of in the way that Castle is as a playmaker. And then they also have Sohan, who's like a shooting question mark, let's say long term, in a similar way to Castle is. So if you're building around like this core group of guys, I think I like the upside of Shea and Modis with this core group than Castle at number 4.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we're in the same boat here. I would have Shea. I have Shea one spot above Matas. So again, like this is going to be one of those, it may end up like you let me make the ultimate decision on the last pick. Maybe you make the ultimate decision here. I assume Matas is higher on your board than Shea in like your general board.
He is. I do have Modis a spot or 2 higher. The reason that I do is I think the athletic upside is just a little bit better in terms of like defensive playmaking. Shea is obviously a better shooter right now.
Yep.
I think Modis's on-ball creation. How do you feel about that? Like both of their like on-ball creation games.
So I will give this caveat. I see Shea a little bit more wingy and Matas a little bit more forward biggie. And those are different positions to me. So I look at them as a little different archetype. And for that archetype and role, I would say Matas is definitely better putting the ball on the deck for that role and archetype that I see him. Like if we went old school positions, I would look at Risa Shea more as a 3 and Matas is more of a 4. And I would say, I would say Matas maybe is a little bit, I would say Matas off the bounce is probably already a little better, but then whenever you figure he's playing at the 4, then for that role, that archetype, it's definitely better than Risa Shea. Yeah,
very interesting.
Because no, you've definitely. I've thought this the whole time we've recorded because you kind of talked about Risa Shea more as that 4.
Yeah, I like him a lot as like the backline defender and like playing, kind of using his length at a high level on that side. But like physically, you're probably right in terms of strength.
I think that's why I look at him as a wing as opposed to a forward right now. Is I just don't think physically he's ready to do that. I also have like notes from early in the year where I thought he navigated screens well. So I think Risa Shea can get out and guard the perimeter better than Matas. I think Matas's absolute best defensive value is in the role you just described as the low man, rim protector, play with verticality.
But how much do you need that if you have Wemby already?
That's fair. I consider a lot of this stuff from a Pistons perspective, and that's why I like talk about it so much with Matas, because that makes so much sense for the Pistons, which I know we'll get there in a second. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's fair with the Spurs. That makes sense, where I think maybe what Risa Shea does makes more sense on the defensive end then. And listen, I will straight up say, I think Risa Shea is a better floor spacer. I buy Risa Shea's jumper more than I buy Matas's.
I do too right now. I think that's the right answer for what it's worth. Yeah, let's go Risa Shea. You've sold me, to be honest. You've sold me in a big way on that. Okay.
I did not want to do that because I wanted him to fall to number 5.
The Detroit Pistons at number 5. But no, this works because if you think Matas is more of like a 4 or a forward, Matas makes more sense for Detroit.
Yes.
I think Matas is going to shoot just fine. Like, I don't think he's going to be like a super high level shooter. I don't think he's going to be like a shooter off of movement or anything, but I think he'll make spot threes. Like, I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah, no, I think he can as well. I think as I've bought into Matas so much more seeing him as a forward than when I was trying to make him a wing. And it's like, okay, well, this dribbling, this passing, even the shooting, like it's okay for a wing. And then I think about him as a 4, or even we've talked about this, maybe playing some small ball 5, maybe not early in his career, but as he continues to fill out his body. And I'm like, oh, well, that's really nice. Like, how many 5 men are staying in front of a guy that can shoot and attack a closeout like that? And he can protect the rim. Now, can he play drop coverage? I don't know, but maybe you just switch with him. So I've bought into him a lot more. That's why he's number 4 on my board at this point. I think he makes a ton of sense for the Pistons. If they really want to try to build out something defensively, him and Asar, like hopefully he shoots it good enough to counter Asar. Those two guys defensively, just running around, being long and athletic, makes a lot of sense. You got to figure out a center that can defend, whether that's Duren or somebody else. But he spaces the floor enough to give Cade Cunningham areas to cook. I think he makes a lot of sense. I don't love Ron Holland here. Don't love Steph Castle here, unless you tell me he can shoot. If he can shoot, I'm a little more intrigued.
So here, let's do this real quick.
Okay.
How would you rank the shooting upside long term of these 3 players?
Okay.
Matas, Steph Castle, Ron Holland.
Matas, Holland, Castle.
I would go Matas, Castle, Holland. I think Castle's mechanics are a little bit better than Holland's. I think Holland has like a bit of a hitch that worries me in terms of stepping all the way back to the NBA line. Ron is quite young compared to these guys. Like Ron's like a full year younger than Matas, for instance. But I do think I like the potential of Castle as a shooter a little bit more, not a lot more. Like, I think that he went through positive streaks this year that made me buy it a little bit more than Ron's. And when we're talking for the Pistons, what you and I have talked about previously is that they can't draft any non-shooters.
Yeah.
You cannot draft a guy if you do not project him to be a shooter long-term. If you do, you're setting up Cade Cunningham to fail. This name is interesting to me. Shout out Ryanel Maids. Buzelis is kind of like a Michael Porter Jr. archetype. I dig that as a comparison point. I don't think he'll ever be the like shooter off of
Yeah,
movement that
agreed.
Porter is. They can really run Porter off of a lot of high level action with Nikola Jokic that is really valuable. But I think that like if you consider him like a bit of like a smaller tier down, Michael Porter Jr., who honestly like a more like serious human being who is like a very like high work ethic kid, like I don't want to get into like Michael Porter's like character or anything, like it's certainly not anywhere I want to go, but like Modest is like a super high end like work ethic serious individual. I think that that's an interesting point of comparison with the cutting, with the shooting, off ball movement, things like that at 6'10". That makes sense to me. Like I actually quite like this now a little bit more for the Pistons, framing it that way.
Yeah, no, if I'm Pistons fans, I feel good about this in terms of if you're going to fall to 5 and you're still going to end up with your Buzelis, that's a guy I'm telling you right now, if they would have got the number 1 pick and I recorded our Pistons pod starting an hour from now, we would have talked about Alex Sarr and then Risa Shea and then Buzelis. Like I guarantee you those would have been the 3 first names on the outline. And so if they could get him at 5 still, this fall or whatever you want to call it ends up not being as big a deal. Another name I do want to bring up, because I know for one, Pistons fans want to hear about it, is Cody Williams. Well, there's 2 names that I know Pistons fans are going to hear. Cody Williams and honestly, Dalton Knecht. Now that they have fallen to 5, I guarantee you I'm going to get asked a lot about Dalton Knecht for the Pistons at number 5. So your thoughts on those 2 guys?
Who was the guy that like Pistons fans last year asked a lot about that like was in the lower tier because he was a shooter? Why can't I remember?
Let me look through the draft and see if
obviously taking Asar Thompson, right? It was
Taylor Hendricks.
Yes. Like why aren't they taking Taylor Hendricks?
Yeah.
Why aren't they taking like Grady Dick at number 5? Right.
Yes.
That would be more what that would be for the Pistons. Look, I think Dalton is a better prospect than Grady Dick. I think just like mechanically, athletically, he is like more of a scorer. I think he is a better potential driver of the basketball. He has more answers for a number of different ways that defenders can play him. And that's not a slight at Grady. I just think that Dalton is like a little bit more advanced than he should be. He's 3 years older, right? But like, look, I mean, like, I think Dalton will probably be on their board at least. Just as a shooter, but if I was them, I'd try to fill the 4 spot more than I would try to fill the Dalton Knecht.
I think Knecht only comes into play is if you don't think Mata shoots, you don't think Ron shoots, you don't think Castle shoots, you don't want to draft a big and Donovan Clingan, you don't think Cody Williams shoots because even though the percentage was great, the just volume of attempts wasn't, high enough to. I don't know how much you can actually take away from it. Listen, his touch around the rim is awesome. He may be the best finisher at the top in terms of that. And I think because of that, you have to talk about him as well, just because of the talent. But I think that's where Dalton Knecht comes into play is if we got to get shooting and we don't think any of these other guys can actually shoot.
Yeah. And like, I guess that the last thing we need to bring up here with Modest, because I think we're going to go Modest here, right?
Yes.
Michael Tellum represents Modest, obviously Arn Tellum in the Detroit Pistons front office. I would imagine that there is a lot of, positive feeling toward Modest because like I said, like Modest is like a genuine, like high work ethic, high character kid. If you talk to anybody around the league, right? Detroit will certainly have that intel. They'll have access to everything there in that regard. And they have not been afraid to take flyers on Michael Tellum players before, even with the connection there. So let's go Modest. I think Modest makes sense for them.
Perfect.
Okay. Number 6, we are up with the Charlotte Hornets. This is actually like a fairly easy pick for me now.
You would go Steph.
I would go Castle, and I wouldn't really think twice about it.
I am cool with that. I would have a conversation with Ron Holland because he's 1 spot above Castle on my board, but like we're nitpicking, like at the end of the day, and for Charlotte, I don't know that what I believe in Ron makes more sense than Castle for them anyway. Because like the only reason I have
here,
Holland a little higher is because the scoring upside.
yeah. So here'd be the kind of case for and against both, right?
Sure.
Steph Castle is an awesome defender.
Agreed.
Who I think could really, really help them across the 1 through 3 positions. I think he'll be able to guard fours even in the NBA because of how strong he is. He's 215 pounds already, plays with his chest in front of guys, like really good defender. Between Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, if you told me Steph Castle was going to shoot like at a reasonable level, that kind of player would be the ideal player type that I would want as a like second guard next to LaMelo Ball in next to Brandon Miller, who can also create and play make and everything. But Steph Castle is not a great shooter, right? That's the real question here. Ron Holland, a big thing for him would be like transition play, right? Like gets up and down, attacks out on the break, would be an awesome partner for LaMelo Ball as they try and like get up and down, create on the break. Obviously, you put him next to Brandon Miller, he can be like a guy that is kind of like a junkyard dog, takes on, tough defensive assignments on the ball, takes those away from Brandon Miller. I think that there is real, veracity to doing that and taking Ron Holland here. I think that I like the Steph archetype a little bit better for Charlotte particularly, but I'm willing to be swayed on it.
I don't think I have the sway because at the end of the day, LaMelo is going to get buckets. I think we both think Brandon Miller is really going to get buckets. And
I think Brandon Miller is going to be like an all NBA guy at this point. Like I'll just straight up say that.
And listen, like neither of us would really want to talk about this guy, but if he's on the roster, he gets some buckets. Miles Bridges scores the ball. So I don't know that adding Ron Holland only because he potentially has higher offensive scoring upside makes as much sense. Where, like, again, like I said, I think Holland shoots it better than Castle. That's just based on sheer volume and kind of like confidence right now. But like, I'm not super confident in that decision. And you had Castle above Holland. I think Castle's a better, like, solid defender, if that makes sense. I think Holland's a little bit more like pressure you, passing lanes, maybe some of the foundational fundamental stuff we'll have to grow and learn. I'm okay with them taking Castle and just like, hey, let's get the guy we're a little more confident in. The floor maybe isn't quite as low. And you've said this. Now, if Steph shoots it, then you just hit a home run. So at the very least, you get a really nice defender. And here's the thing with Steph too. He cuts off the ball really well, Sam. Like, I think he's a guy who, in high school played with the ball in his hands, was kind of projected as this primary initiator. And maybe he plays that role off the bench when LaMelo's not in the game. So, and I think he does that better than Ron Holland, to be clear. Absolutely. I think Ron Holland needs to be coming off pin downs and transition and all of those things. I think Steph can do a little more in, with the ball in his hands and create. So you talk to me. I don't want to argue this. I think Castle makes sense.
Who do you think has, if let's say that we make both Steph Castle and Ron Holland shooters, right? We project them as being hitting whatever the ceiling of their shooting is, right?
Yeah.
Who is the better prospect?
I think Ron Holland. I think Ron Holland with a 3-point shot is a nightmare offensively. Like, I think he's getting a ton of buckets in that scenario.
See, I think it's Castle because of I think Castle's a more advanced defender, and I think the passing and playmaking it would be improved even more.
That's fair.
At the end of the day,
sure.
If you added that,
sure, yeah,
yeah, it's hard. This is an interesting point. I'm gonna say let's go Castle here.
No, I'm on board.
A little bit more sense.
No, I'm cool with it. And again, this is another one. If you're Charlotte fans out there and you're getting Castle at 6, I think you should feel pretty happy about that.
Okay, we're up at number 7 now. Portland Trailblazers here.
Yep.
Are in a fascinating position because obviously Scoot Henderson is their guy long term, right? You have Anthony Simons, who has 2 years left on his deal before he's an unrestricted free agent. You just drafted Chris Murray, who I think showed some interesting signs last year. Tamani Kamara certainly looks like a great defender long term at the very least. Shaden Sharp is a real like upside prospect who didn't play a ton this year. And then whatever you have with Scoot and then Malcolm Brogdon and all these older vets and everything, right? You also have DeAndre Ayton here. And DeAndre Ayton in the back half of the season was really impactful offensively. You and I talked a little bit early in the season how his effort level frustrated us. Not even effort, but like attention to detail, maybe in terms of screening, creating easy opportunities for his teammates, things like that. Portland's defense was not great this year. Portland's offense was even worse. I think they were 29th in offense, 23 in defense. You have DeAndre Ayton, I believe, for 2 more years left on this contract. Do we think that Donovan Clingan is on the board for them?
Yes.
I would agree with you that I think he's on the board for them.
Yeah.
Do we think that Ron Holland is on the board for them, knowing that this is a team that last year really struggled to shoot the basketball? They finished dead last in 3-point percentage, bottom third of the league in 3-point attempt rate.
I would say no. They would.
I would not take Ron Holland if I was them.
Yeah. This is the thing with Holland. I really like his game, and it still continues to be hard to find the right spot for him.
I think so too. Dillingham, we think, is a no.
Agreed.
Cody Williams, Dalton Connect. Anybody there that kind of intrigues you?
I mean, those were the names for me. I have Clingan, Connect, Cody Williams. Clingan would be the best prospect of those 3. I actually have Cody Williams kind of in the tier below those guys. If you wanted to talk about it, I would hear that out. But those are the 3 names for me. They're right there on the 7, 10, 11 for Fanspo.
So over at The Athletic, I mocked Connect here.
I like it.
Start. Over Ron Holland, over Reed Shepherd, guys like that.
Yep.
I think if Clingan is there, I do wonder if this is a real consideration for them, even having Ayton and Rob Williams. You could move Rob Williams this summer if you want to. You could see what's available for DeAndre Ayton. If you really want to build an awesome defensive infrastructure, which they have the makings of around Scoot, and then you have 14, which means you could go and get a shooter, a spacer, whatever you want to do. I wonder if that makes sense.
Here's the other thing though. What if you wait to 14 and see if Flip's there? If you want, if you need a center, you have, to me, 14 is going to have some dudes like Flip. It's probably a little high for DeRon Holmes, some guys like Zach Edey, Misi, stuff like that. But there's going to be guys there at 14, some big men if you want them. Now, I'm not saying that, Flip is in the same category as Clingan, but how good do you think Duop Reith is? You think he's a backup center?
A solid backup center. Yeah.
So that's my thing. I would be excited about a Clingan, Duop Reith, and just get rid of Ayton and Robert Williams and just roll with those 2 guys at my center. What's the value for those guys? Yeah. Are you getting anything making those moves though?
I don't know, because Rob Williams obviously has the injury stuff, missed a lot of this year, missed I think the entire year basically. DeAndre has the big contract, which makes it tricky. He's almost going to be a match guy in a star trade almost, just because of how big the contract is. Here's one. Could you do DeAndre Ayton in 14 for Brandon Ingram?
Sure. Oh yeah. That makes a lot of sense for them. Sure.
And does it make sense for the Pelicans? Cause Valanciunas is a free agent and you need a big. I'm somewhat intrigued by that.
He doesn't.
The money works. I know that.
He doesn't stretch the floor as much as what you would want next to Zion, but he at least stretches it to 15 feet. Interesting. And then you just draft Clingan.
Yeah. And then you just draft Clingan.
Okay. It's a lot of money on their books whenever you give Ingram that extension and have Jeremy Grant. But,
We're not doing trades in this. So like, let's say
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton's there.
Yeah. Listen, I mocked Dalton Connect to him in our very, very first one. So there's part of me that just wants to do it again. And here's the thing. I think Dalton Connect can really score the basketball. I think at the very least, he shoots threes extremely well. This is a dude with a ton of three-point attempts throughout his career. And I'll say it every time we talk about him. I think there's more upside than your normal 23-year-old because of his path up to this point in his career. I'm a Dalton Connect fan, and I'm probably higher on him than most. I'm okay with that, but I think he can really score the basketball. And I think the defense, he's athletic, Sam. We talked about this. Like, there's a chance he could be good defensively because he is athletic.
Here's the other like thing. If you're Memphis now and you see Donovan Clingan on the board still,
oh yeah.
like you absolutely are trying to move up and you're using, like here's a great question. If you offered Vince Williams in number 9 for number 7 to get Donovan Clingan.
Yes.
So basically,
yes. If I'm Portland, yes.
Yeah. Vince Williams and Ron Holland for Donovan Clingan.
Yes.
Do you do that if you're Memphis?
Vince Williams is pretty good, Sam.
Vince Williams is really good. Like I think Vince Williams is outstanding, but to move up like a couple of spots here, you're actually gonna have to give up something of value. Like I don't know if Jake LaRavia gets you up there.
I think if I'm Memphis, I would call the bluff.
Okay.
Because I don't think I believe San Antonio is going to take Clingan either, based off the conversation like the conversation we had 30 minutes ago and the player we're probably about to take.
Okay. Let's go with Connect then.
Okay.
All right. Dalton Connect, shooter, spacer for the Portland Trailblazers makes sense. Then we're doing Dillingham at 8. We can buzz through this because we talked about this at the top.
Yep.
The idea with Dillingham would be kind of similar to like the idea of getting Trae Young on the Spurs. Just not as good of a passer. Honestly, not as dynamic as a scorer in terms of the space he brings as a shooter, everything like that. Trae can shoot out to 30 feet. Dillingham is not quite that. But high level scorer, playmaker, don't have to use as many assets to go get him. Has some real upside. I think Dillingham makes sense for the Spurs here. And then
Sam, I'll just say real quick, they walk out of this draft with Ricochet and Dillingham, and the Spurs may be my new favorite team. Like that is pretty exciting.
It's a fun group. And somehow we end
Grizzlies.
Up with the Grizzlies having Donovan Clingan on the board.
I love it.
Donovan Clingan is listed in the like number 2 through number 6 range on the NBA's like memo that it sent out to teams in terms of like who has access to medicals. I think that the way that this worked out though is very plausible. And we say this every year that bigs just have fewer landing spots than other guys, right? Donovan Clingan could very well land at number 2, could very well land at number 3. I mean, we didn't really talk about him for Detroit. I think that my impression is that they just really like Jalen Duren. I would very strongly consider Donovan Clingan, but I don't think that they will.
I would have brought him up. I just felt like we had ran long, and I don't want people like, oh, because he's a Pistons person. They talk a lot about the Pistons. The other thing is, like, we threw his name out at number 1. Like, what if the Hawks really want a big and they don't think Sarr is as good as him? Then that could be your guy.
I think that's right. But look, if he falls to 9, this is the absolute floor. Like, there's no way.
No way.
Me. Yeah.
And we talked about it. Like, we talked about him at so many spots. This is what makes the draft so interesting, and why, like, I don't know the intel game as what, like, you probably have some that you couldn't talk about as much or whatever, but it's like these teams have to play this. As you're a GM of the Grizzlies, you have to go, do we think he's going to take him? Do we think they're going to take him? Did they bring him in for a visit? What did we hear coming out of that? What is his camp saying? Oh, I won't get into like Patrick Mahomes has told some of these stories about how he got to Kansas City and some of that stuff, some of like the behind the scenes of how this stuff actually happens. And it's just interesting as we played out. Like, do you wait or do you make a move to go up and get him?
Yeah, to me, like if I'm Memphis and Donovan Clingan is sitting there at like 6 or 7, I'm just
Yeah,
going up and getting him.
I
Like
agree with you.
like if it's number 6, like I would probably be willing to give up like a protected first and number 9 to go up and get Clingan, because like
Yeah.
he just makes all the sense in the world for them as a player next to Jaren Jackson. But look, he just falls to 9 here. It works out well. Number 10, the Utah Jazz. This one's like kind of easy to me too, to be honest. Yeah. Take Ron Holland. Take the high effort, high energy, like super impactful, super competitive dude at the wing position. Like, I don't know that this is Holland's floor, to be honest. The Jazz do like more skill-based guys. They also drafted Taylor Hendricks last year. It would be a big bet on Hendricks being able to shoot long-term, which I like. Like, I think Hendricks will knock down corner shots and be able to knock down shots, off the catch at least. I think this makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of sense for them.
I agree with you that I don't think this is his floor either. And again, this is coming from someone very high on Ron Holland compared to, like, I guess I saw Ron Holland as the number 1 player on somebody's board the other day, but in general, I think you find him closer to this range. I have him number 5, but yeah, I will admit, every mock draft I have done over the last month, I've struggled to find the perfect landing spot for him, especially if it's not Charlotte.
I think that's right. I struggle with it all the time. I think Ron Holland's good. Like, I have Ron Holland like right around like 5 or 6 on my board. I like Ron. It's just hard to find the fit in a shooting conscious NBA if you don't love the shot.
Yep.
Ron Holland at 10.
Yep.
Number 11, the Chicago Bulls. Nothing really changes for them in this thing. The top 10 guys go off the board in the top 10. Cody Williams is sitting here at number 11.
That's
Isaiah Collier sitting here at number 11. Filipowski, Jared McCain.
Yep.
Saloon, Devin Carter. Any way you're leaning.
I would go Cody Williams just because if I'm the Bulls, I want to take the best player available. I think, to me, like, I don't know where I'm at with Cody Williams. I think the
I struggle with him a lot.
I struggle so much. I think the touch is awesome. I will say, I talked to somebody the other day that was like, Bryce, I think you're too hard on him. He was playing with a mask. Then he rolled his ankle. Like, some of the stuff that you're critiquing him for might be because of some of that stuff. And listen, I will say, I played with a mask whenever I was in college, and it bugged the hell out of me. Like, some people go, oh, it's not that big of a, like, it drove me crazy. I remember trying to reach for a ball and I pulled my hand away and the ball like went over my head, but my depth perception thought that it was 3 feet away or whatever. So, let alone a broken, like mine was a broken nose. Like, you are a little wary of getting hit in the nose again and stuff like that. So I don't want to give him a complete pass. It was just like, okay, maybe I need to reconsider some of this. I'm not willing to like put him in my top 5, but I think at 11, he's definitely the best player on my board. And if I'm the Bulls, I don't know which way they're going or what they're going to do. I'll take the best player available and just roll with it.
Yeah, I think I might have mocked them Isaiah Collier in mine, just like as another ball handling.
I think we did that the last one too, our last mock, I think. So
yeah, and I don't know how much I think that is what they will be thinking. Arturas Karnisovas has like a wild track record, kind of all over the map at this point with the draft. Like, it's hard to tell what he likes, what he doesn't like. Cody Williams does tick a lot of boxes, like in the same Pat Williams mold,
sure,
kind of. Obviously, Pat Williams is a restricted free agent this year.
I say, what if Pat gets a bag though, Sam? Like, maybe that's a Pat Williams replacement then.
Yeah, and Cody's different. Obviously, Cody, like Pat Williams, is like a physical like dude, like 235 pounds, and was ready to go from the jump in the NBA. Cody, I think, is going to take some time just in terms of his frame. Needs to get a little bit stronger. But I agree with you. Like, if you look at his games pre-ankle injury, he averaged like 15 points a game over his 14 games before his ankle injury. So
here's the other thing. Like, if I'm the NBA, I am not letting the Oklahoma City Thunder draft Cody Williams and just get another steal of a draft pick and let him go play there with his brother and in that team. So
yeah, that's funny. That's very funny. Okay. Number 12, the Oklahoma City Thunder. You and I have tended to mock Kyle Filipowski to the
Yeah.
spot quite a bit.
Yeah.
He is the guy that I probably like the most in that spot. Let's have a conversation about a few other
Okay.
guys.
Yeah, let's do it.
Jared McCain to me is an intriguing bet if you like the idea of them not having enough money to pay Isaiah Joe long term.
Sure. Yeah.
It's very clear that this is a really important like role on their team to be able to have somebody off the bench who can come in and like really space the court. They love to be able to play 5 out. They love to be able to kind of make the offense work that way around Shea and Jalen Williams driving to the rim.
Yeah.
Jared McCain would be like a really, really good positive bet if you think you don't have the money to pay Isaiah Joe long term.
Yeah, listen, I tried to not like overreact whenever McCain, like the tournament games and stuff like that. And so I've been a little slow. He's another guy I've really moved up my board. I think McCain is probably a lottery pick. If not, it's going to be right after the lottery. What's Dort's? Dort still has a few years. Okay, so that's
a couple
not
of years.
Yeah, because I guess the scenario I was playing out in my head is like, do you eventually move? Does Dort move on? Kaysen slides into the starting lineup, and now Jared kind of plays that role off the bench of almost the Kaysen and Isaiah Joe role in one. And obviously you add other guys as well, but that's not going to play out as quickly as what I was thinking, not with the contract that Dort's on. So, yeah, I don't think Isaiah Joe's really important. I mean, he was playing down the stretch the other night, right? As Giddey continues to get less minutes. And so he's going to get paid. You know, maybe if he gets paid, maybe the Thunder pay him, but move Dort because they think Kaysen can take that role or something. Do you think this is more important, or do you think upgrading the center position behind Chet is more important? Like how confident are you in like Jalen Williams and Kenrick Williams?
Fairly confident. I like Jalen quite a bit. Kenrich is just like a little bit older at this point. Like, I don't know if he's, the long-term answer anywhere for the Thunder. But I do like Jalen. I think Jalen is pretty good and is like an intriguing guy who can play with Chet or without Chet.
And has an awesome contract that is 2 more years. Kenrick is 3 more years. There's team options on the end of those. Like, that's where I start to struggle a little bit with Flip is.
Well, and they also have Ousmane Dieng, who they drafted in the lottery a couple of years ago.
Like, I like Flip, but that's why I think more and more as we continue to mock him to Thunder, because he does make so much sense because he's their type of guy. And at the end of the day, they're drafting to replace somebody, right? Like that's just the fact of how good their roster. I guess there's an argument for a little more wingy forward type of player, like Tinjon Saloon or someone like that. Is there an argument for a player more in that role?
Let's talk a little bit about Saloon. I like Saloon as an interesting bet as like a athletic motor player.
Yeah.
6'9", 6'10", 7'3" wingspan, 7'2" wingspan, something like that. I think he has a ways to go on offense. I see the flashes in terms of like open court ball handling, but like he gets ripped pretty regularly. I see the flashes in terms of shooting. He's shooting like 33% from 3. I think he'll probably shoot long term, but some concerning stuff there, I would say.
Agreed.
Seems like he has a great attitude on the court. Seems like just like awesome competitor the way he plays.
Hard.
I can really see Oklahoma City vibing with that.
Yeah.
In a real way. Like competitive spirit. Like, what are the things we talk about with Oklahoma City all the time?
Yeah.
Positional size, feel for the game, great competitors, like high level competitive spirit, great human beings.
Physicality. I think he looks very physically built for his age.
Yep. Totally agree with that. I do wonder if Saloon is like pretty strongly on the board for the Thunder.
Let me ask you
like
this,
he just ticks a lot of their boxes.
The second thing you said, though, I don't know that do either of us really believe in his feel for the game right now.
No, not right now.
I think that's a big thing. So I want to throw out another guy. Is this way too high for a guy like Tristan da Silva?
No,
Is he
I
is
don't
he a
think so.
thundery type of player? Because I don't think he's as physical as what we've talked about, but feel for the game, dribble, pass, shoot, those type of things.
Yeah, we'll talk about Tristan with the next pick, particularly. The reason I don't like him for the Thunder is the rebounding aspect.
Sure, that's fair.
Tristan,
Yep.
his biggest weakness as a player, in my opinion, is the rebounding.
100% agree.
I like the Thunder to get somebody as a rebounder because they struggled. Like, it is their biggest problem right now as an organization is the rebounding, especially, and this is the place where Josh Giddey helps them. If you think they're going to move Josh Giddey this summer because of his impending contract and because the fit isn't super great, Josh Giddey is really valuable to them as a rebounder.
Yeah. Yep.
So I think they go big, and I think this gets us back to Filipowski here.
Sure.
Filipowski is a dribble, pass, shoot 7-footer, and it is really hard to find those guys, like truly, and they are essential to what they want to do in their scheme. Having guys who can dribble, pass, shoot at the big position,
and a guy who I think can at least get to neutral defensively because he moves a little better and he is 7 foot. Like, he has great size. So he's not an anchor. He's not going to protect the rim like Chet or any of these other guys. I think he's better than what a lot of people give him credit for.
Yep. Kyle Filipowski, 13. Now we're up with the Kings at 13. Filipowski, 12, Kings at 13.
Yep.
This is where I think Tristan da Silva comes into play. They have the ass kicker who can get the rebounds in Domantas Sabonis, best rebounder in the league this year. I also, fits next to Keegan well, really moves well off the ball, knocks down shots. I think he makes a ton of sense for the Kings. Like, da Silva is a fantastic bet for them.
I'm just trying, do any of these guards make sense? Like, that's where
one that I think makes a lot of sense.
Doesn't Jared make a ton of sense here to replace Herter and potentially Monk?
Yes, in a big way, because Monk, I think it's going to be hard for the Kings to retain Malik Monk in free agency just because of the money aspect.
Yeah.
They only have early bird rights, which means they can only offer, I think, like 17-ish or so in the first year. I think he's going to get big money from somebody like Detroit or Orlando.
He'd be a lot of fun in Orlando. Yeah, I think I have Jared McCain slightly higher on my board than da Silva. And while I agree da Silva can make sense, I think I would actually go McCain here. I think that could be a real hole for them next year. And then even if you bring him back, he can still, like, you could start him, you could start McCain. I mean, I assume you would start Monk, but if Monk, like, is this bench savant or whatever, you could start McCain. I think Herter's still on the roster. So obviously there's that. I just think McCain makes a lot of sense because I'm with you. I don't think Monk, unless Monk's priorities are staying in Sacramento and winning, which I would respect, obviously, I think he's going to be able to go get a lot of money somewhere. And I would not blame him at all for that either. Like, go get your bag for a few years and, and then hit free agency again or whatever. So I like McCain with this pick. I think that's going to fill a void that they're absolutely going to have.
I agree that I like Jared McCain best with this pick. And we're going to go Jared McCain here.
Okay.
I think he really ticks a lot of boxes as they try and replace Malik Monk.
Yep.
Okay, number 14, we're back up with the Portland Trail Blazers. We took Dalton Connect already with their pick. To me, like, they could have, probably not Collier, but
agreed.
Tidjon Saloon, Devin Carter, Jacoby Walter. I think that certainly Tristan da Silva will probably be on their board as well.
Yep.
And a number of different guys here that I think you could strongly look at.
I would go Saloon with this pick. I think I would, if I was them. Swing. It's a little interesting with, like, I don't think he's the same as Murray. There's a little bit with, like, Toumani Camara. But, like, I would just swing. Like, if you're taking Dalton Connect at 7, it's because you think he comes in, he can play, he can space the floor, all of that. I think I would go Saloon and just hope that's your long-term, like a year. You're going to keep Grant on the contract or on roster for another year or two until that contract's a little more tradable because it becomes an expiring. And then maybe by that time, Saloon's ready to slide right in there and take over that spot. I would go.
This is what I mocked for what it's worth.
Saloon.
I mocked Connect and Saloon.
Love it.
So this makes a lot of sense to me. I have Saloon a little bit lower on my board.
I do as well, actually.
I do really like him quite a bit, but I ended up with him in the like 17 to 20 range as opposed to 14. That's okay though. Take the swing, take the flyer, see what happens.
I have him at 17 in a tier with 3 or 4 other guys that are still on the board in this tier.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, the Miami Heat. You and I feel quite strongly about this pick, I believe.
Devin Carter or Collier?
Devin Carter.
Yeah, Devin Carter. Yeah.
Put Devin Carter on the Miami Heat. Devin Carter is hyper competitive, has been around the organization for a long time because Anthony Carter, up until getting hired by Memphis this past season, worked for the Miami Heat for a long time, played for the Miami Heat for a long time. Devin Carter ticks a lot of boxes in terms of what they need in a guard next to Tyler Hero and Terry Rozier. Like, Heat culture off the charts, can shoot it, can defend. Like, I think he makes a ton of sense.
Yep, I agree 100%.
Okay, let's just go Devin Carter here and not really think twice about it.
I like it.
Number 16. This is the Philadelphia 76ers.
Yep.
I would be stunned if they make this pick. Right. I'm just going to be honest with you. It feels like a pick that's ripe to be moved. They're probably not going to be this high again. They have multiple picks to be able to move for a star, or they could sign the, Paul George type guy in free agency and then move this pick for like a whatever, right? Whatever you want to move them for. Depending on what you sign, right? Like, you go get a guard, you go get a wing, like whatever you want. I would be stunned if they make this pick. So like, I don't really even care who we mock here.
Yeah. I would say Collier or Tristan da Silva. I have Collier. Okay.
Let's just pop Collier in here.
Perfect.
It does not make sense to me for the Sixers to make this pick.
Yeah.
Okay. 17. This says Pelicans. This is we're going to say this is LA. Yeah. They have the option to defer this, the Pelicans. My read is that they're probably going to defer it, but I don't think they've made the choice yet.
And I think I heard that doesn't have to be made until June 1.
It's June 1 is the date. Yes, that's correct. The Lakers are in a more interesting spot to me, but also they want a ready-made guy who can play next to LeBron and Anthony Davis. Tristan da Silva is kind of a perfect guy for them, right?
I'm in.
They drafted the super young guy last year in Jalen Hood-Schifino. Didn't work out. They've tended to have more luck with older guys with the Lakers, right? So, yeah, I like Tristan da Silva here a lot. I think he makes a ton of sense for them. The other position you could look at is big. Like, if Kyle Filipowski was to fall to 17, I like that pick for them. But yeah, to me, I like da Silva quite a bit for them.
Yeah, and like they say, if McCain or Carter fell, those guys would make sense. If you're looking at a big, and I'm sure we're about to talk about all of these, but Deron Holmes, Yves Missi, Zach Edey are all guys that are on the board right now. If you think that's where the Lakers need to go, I know I was working with Trevor Lane, and he actually took Edey in a mock that we did together. So he felt like that big center to take on those matchups was something the Lakers could use. So
love it. Magic at 18. Shooting guard, could use like another floor spacer, maybe could use like a lead guard, honestly.
So we're taking your guy here, Bub.
I don't know yet. I'm willing to have a conversation. Who do you think?
This was always a Jacoby Walter spot. I think that's who I took for them the last time. I continue to be a little lower on Jacoby.
I am lower on Jacoby.
Yeah. I don't have the guy you just described, I guess is my point. Like, I'm looking at Like my board right now is Deron Holmes, Jalen Tyson, Bub, Misi, Kolick, Edie, Tyler Smith, before we get to then a ton of wings. So this is an interesting spot for
here's
Orlando.
another question. Do they look at backup center? Because Goga Batadze is a free agent and they were playing a ton of John Isaac at center. I don't know if they want to keep doing that or not. Obviously have Wendell Carter, but
And
like
Mo.
Who?
They have Mo Wagner.
Oh, Mo Wagner.
Too.
Yeah. They have Wagner as well. But like, I think Wagner's like more of like a 4 at the end of the day. Like he can play the 5 and like is a mismatch guy at the 5, but like the 4 seems to like track a little bit better for him. I don't know. Deron Holmes is kind of interesting for Orlando, I guess.
Listen, I know this is one of the guys that I'm higher on than most. I think Deron Holmes is going to shoot it. Like, I think he can shoot. I think he's skilled. He's going to be able to defend. If Orlando's looking for a guy that can space the floor at that big man position, I know it doesn't, like, I don't know at this spot in the draft, they're going to get that backcourt player that fits this need that we always talk about. And so if you're not going to get that, I don't know if you add another wing, then go get a big. And to me, the best big on the board, and he's skilled, is Deron Holmes.
Or is Yves Misi just like so magic that it hurts in terms of like the length?
The length. Yeah. No, I think that's what it would come down to, right? Like I have Holmes higher, but it comes down to your prerogative of, do you want the more skilled guy that can run a DHO and pass and shoot in Deron, or do you want, the rim lob threat in Misi? So I like this a lot, especially if you're not going to be able to get that backcourt player.
I'm willing to take the L here and move down with Bub, but we're going to get to Bub here momentarily. Okay. Toronto up at 19. Toronto did not get its pick.
Yep.
So this is their first pick. I think you need shooting, certainly, around Scotty Barnes, even with them taking Grady Dick last year. You're going to lose, potentially Gary Trent in free agency. You do have RJ Barrett as well. Do you look more spacing big, like a Tyler Smith or a Khalil Ware or somebody like that? Do you just look at the big position behind Jakob Poeltl with Yves Misi? Or like, does Jacoby Walter make sense here finally? Or does Bob Carrington make sense here?
Yeah. I like sport. Like we've talked about this with Scotty Barnes and, they've essentially given him the keys to the car. Do we agree with that or not? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It seems like that's what they've done. And so I think to get the best out of Scotty Barnes, I think you need as much floor spacing as possible. I don't love this for Bub because I don't think he gets the ball enough in this scenario.
Sure.
So I don't love this for Bub. Like I think Bub can play off the ball, but I want to if I'm taking Bub, I want the ball in this.
I have a different spot coming up for Bub that we'll talk about.
So honestly, I think the best floor spacer on my board right now, that would be Tyler Smith. So I think this comes down to the floor spacing of Tyler Smith or the rim gravity of Misi, or then I guess if you want it to be a guard or a wing, then Jacoby Walter.
Yeah. Like here's another question. They have an option to be like in above the cap or below the cap team, depending on what they do with Bruce Brown. Do you think that they decide to pick up that team option on Bruce Brown? If they don't, Jacoby Walter makes a lot of sense here.
Sure. No, I think this is probably the range now that Jacoby makes a lot of sense. I think Jacoby shoots it better than the percentages say. And I
do too.
I went and watched all of these guys and just some tertiary offensive stuff because I had scouted full games throughout the whole season. And I'm like, I buy this jumper and he can do it on movement. And I don't know what else he does offensively, but at this spot in the draft, if I can get a great kid with some tools to be good defensively and really shoot it, especially on movement, that makes sense. So to me, I think I've talked myself into Jacoby or Tyler Smith. I'll let you choose whether we want the perimeter player or the big.
Yeah, to me, it's like the passing and the defense that's more of a worry with Jacoby, but
yeah, agreed.
I think he will shoot. I'm going to say we go Jacoby here at 19.
All right.
All right. Number 20. This is where I want to talk about Bub Carrington.
Okay.
Because yes, they
Ooh.
have Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland, but we don't know what's going to happen with Donovan Mitchell this summer, potentially. They also have Karis LeVert, and Karis LeVert hasn't been great. And I would like a better option than Karis LeVert as like a playmaker in the backcourt. They desperately need like one more playmaker, it feels like.
Yeah, no, I like this, right? Like, I mean, all year they were, Craig Porter Jr. was getting a lot of those backup point guard minutes. So at the what's the worst case scenario, right? You bring Mitchell and Garland back and Bub is your backup guy. And, in a different scenario, you move on from Darius Garland. Like after what we've seen from Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs, I'm not sure that's the guy you move, unless of course he doesn't want to be there. But then you put Bub there. He could kind of play the LeVert role because he has some of that length. Listen, I will be completely transparent on this one. I had Bub higher. I felt like people were lower. And so I don't always go with the consensus, but I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to get clicks and be like extreme. When you text me the other day, like, man, I'm kind of in on Bub, I was like, thank God. Like now I have some, reassurance of what I was seeing. I think he's good, man. And we've said it, when he's locked in defensively, I think he can guard.
I think he can go, man. I've got Bub way higher than other people do. I've got Bub like I have Bub at like 14, 15.
Love it.
Right
I don't
now.
have him that high. I don't love him that much, but
Yeah.
I actually have him right at 20 on my board. So is that what? Yeah, we're at pick 20. So yeah, we're right there.
Yeah. I think Bub is a dude.
Yeah.
Like just straight up. I think
good.
he is such a dude. Super creative passer, like loves the jump pass, unbelievable pull-up metrics.
Yes.
Real like defensive player. Or like potential to be like an okay
potential
player.
when
We
he's
shouldn't
locked
say,
in.
like,
When
zero
he's locked in.
He was bad early in the season, and then throughout the season, what I liked is that he got way better. I love Bub here. I think makes all the sense in the world to me.
Yep.
All right, we're going Bub Carrington.
And just 18 years
20.
old. Like he doesn't turn 19 till after summer league. So you talk about youth and age. A lot of with the foreign prospects, especially this kid's pretty young himself.
Stud. Okay, next up, New Orleans at 21.
One of the bigs.
So like we got bigs that could very easily be an answer here. Eve Missy, Tyler Smith, Khalil Ware,
Edie,
Zach Edey as well. Like I kind of like Edey the best of that group, if I'm being honest.
That was my initial thought too. The argument I would make for Ware or Tyler Smith is they space the floor around Zion.
I totally agree with that. Like I think that I would love to find a shooting big here, but is Tyler Smith good enough at everything else to be effective?
That's a lot of pressure on those wings defensively. All of a sudden, a lot. I mean, it's not like Valanciunas was great, I guess, defensively. Like he's crazy physical. Maybe Edie's the answer. Well, he's not spacing the floor at all, though.
So let's have just a quick 1 minute note on Zach Edey.
Okay.
I think that the shot looks clean.
Okay.
I'm not projecting that he's going to shoot. I will say, if he shoots down the road, I will not be blown away by that outcome.
71% from the free throw line for a career. That's not blow you away, but it's not 50. So
I'm not saying like it's a low percentage outcome. I'm just saying that like this dude's a crazy worker and the shot looks clean.
How awesome would he be if he could do that? Goodness.
Amazing. He'd rock. So Missy makes sense here, like just as a physical, like ass kicker kind of guy, like in the similar vein to what they use with Valanciunas. That's what Edey is to me. I'm a little bit lower on Khalil Ware. I didn't like the defense as much as other people seemed to this year. I still thought there were like effort minute like moments that bothered me. And then Tyler Smith, I think I'm lower on Tyler Smith than where other people are.
Yeah. I mean, I have Ware in this tier, but I don't actually have him in my top 30. So
yeah.
The best big on my board is Messi, then Edie, then Tyler Smith, for what it's worth.
Let's go Edie. I think he makes more sense because
Okay.
they're trying to win now.
Yep. That makes sense.
Okay. 22. The Phoenix Suns, who will be very unlikely to be making this pick.
Yep.
Who do we want to put here? Because I cannot imagine the Suns being the team that makes this pick. James Jones does not like the draft. He's been very upfront and transparent about that. And then Matt Ishbia wants to win now very clearly. So like,
I would say
like
Messi or I have Jalen Tyson fairly high on my board right now. Messi probably makes the most sense. Like if they actually did keep it, it makes sense.
Yeah. Let's toss Messi here.
Okay.
23, Milwaukee. This is where we tossed Khalil Ware last time. I'm lower on Khalil than most people are. I think this is like a real potential trade spot. They will probably explore to see what's out there for sure. The Bucks have been known to be pretty active in general on draft night. Again, like the question for me is like with Budenholzer, it was okay. We can't have shooting, or we can't have anybody who can't shoot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now it feels a little bit different. Like Adrian Griffin was there and they decided we want to play super up tempo. We want to do this. We want to do that. Let's go get Andre Jackson. Right. And then we have Marjon Beauchamp like on the roster. This year it's Doc Rivers is the coach. Like, what do they do with Doc being there? I don't know with the Bucks. I do know that they still need a big that can space the court. And Brook Lopez has 1 year left on the deal. There are bigs here that make sense. Like, honestly, like Bobby Clintman is a name here that's like kind of interesting to me. Yeah, I mean, Tyler Smith is a name. We start getting into like some interesting outcomes.
You're into the wing position of all of these guys, and you rank them however you want. Keyshawn George, Alex Caravan, Johnny Furphy, Justin Edwards, Peyton Sanford, Baylor Sharp, like all of those wings we talk about all the time. We talk about Peyton Sanford because that's the guy I believe in the most. But I think this is where the range for those type of guys probably actually starts, because you're talking about good teams for the most part here that need floor space, can always use more floor spacing. So we're going to talk about it with Milwaukee, even New York, Minnesota, Denver, Boston. It's just like, who do those guys believe are the best floor spacers? Or is it a big floor spacer like you're saying with Tyler Smith, Khalil Ware? I think the other sneaky one, could this potentially be a Kolek spot? Is Beverly coming or with Beverly unrestricted free agent?
Might be a Kolek spot. Yeah.
So I know we love him on the next at the next spot, but
I don't mind it. I don't mind Kolek here.
And he shoots it. Like, this is one reason why I've really risen on Kolek is I push back on Kolek a lot, going back to people that asked me about him last year, but the shooting profile is too good. Like he shot it too well for the last couple of years for me not to buy it, along with the intangibles. So,
okay, let's go Kolek. I'm sold on that.
Cool.
All right. 24, the Knicks, 25, the Knicks.
So this gets harder because both guys we want to send to them, we just drafted.
Yeah, we typically have sent Edie and Kolek to them.
Are they a trade up? Like if they actually love one of those guys, like package those
totally could be.
And
wouldn't blow my mind because they have multiple of these picks and they've been very active. I think they're also a trade out team.
Sure.
They do like to roll over their picks if they can. They like the idea of just like having more assets in the chamber, kind of. I think that they will look, I don't think they're going to use all of their picks, just like truly. Like that's kind of where I'm at. They have 24, 25, and I think 38, right? Yeah, yep. 38.
38.
So I don't think they will use them all. Let's toss Ryan Dunn here as like OG Anunoby insurance.
Okay.
Because we've seen what's happened with OG in the playoffs. He does have real injury history. I like the idea of them getting like another wing who can defend. And like, I think Tibbs would love his defense.
Yeah.
He's not like top of my board for the Knicks, to be clear. And then for this other pick, let's toss Tyler Smith here because Tyler Smith is like falling a little bit. And we're going to say like the Knicks are only using one of these picks, right?
Sure.
So let's just toss Tyler Smith here.
Okay.
Number 26, the Wizards are back up.
All right.
They have taken Nikola Topic.
Oh, this is Khalil Ware then.
Is it?
Don't you think? Are they really good?
So like Khalil Ware grew on me throughout the year. Khalil Ware's like effort and energy level was very up and down.
It's very nice of you.
And putting him to the Wizards, particularly given this roster construction, feels a little bit concerning.
Fair. Listen, I would be upset if I was a Wizards fan and didn't come out of this draft with a big man. I would not like that.
I wouldn't either, but like
none of the what are any of these wings gonna make like where how are they gonna get any of these dudes minutes though?
Yeah, they're not. Like Bobby Clintman, maybe? He's a little bit bigger.
Is this like, do you go backcourt again with Hunter Salas?
That's an interesting name. I like that name a lot.
Now, to be clear, he's the lowest guy in this tier for me. I want to be clear about that. And Khalil Ware, for the record, also is down there with him. But this is the same tier of my end of the first, top of the second that goes to around 35.
Yeah, best players I have available now. Bobby Clintman, Jamal Shed, which like I'm out on a limb on, and I'm aware of that. And they've already taken Topic. Like I get it.
Yep.
Hunter Salas is next.
Okay.
Then Furphy, Baylor Shireman, Jalen Tyson. And I haven't done the Jalen Tyson deep dive yet. I'm doing that today or tomorrow.
I can't wait for that.
Tyson's an interesting one. And then I've Ware after Tyson for what it's worth.
Yeah.
So I've Ware at like 32.
Same, essentially.
Should we just do Ware?
I think so. I would say Ware or Salas. Like if you want to go Salas, I'm fine with that.
Let's go Ware.
I think this is a very like I think there's a chance that this flames out really bad, but I think it's worth the chance.
Okay, Minnesota 27. I think that they need like bench scoring, and they have a bunch of these like, longer athletes, right? Like they have Leonard Miller, they have Josh Minot, Naz Reid's obviously like more of a big, but like can play switchable defense. Jaden McDaniels obviously as well. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think they need like backcourt scoring.
Okay.
Off the bench more than anything. And this is where I really like Hunter Salas. I will bring up another name here.
Okay.
What do you think of Minnesota's own Cam Christie?
I am a little lower on Christie, to be completely fair. If we're going to do this, I would definitely go Salas.
Okay. I would go Salas over Christie as well for what it's worth. Is this a Jalen Tyson spot as the guy that you like a lot?
I mean, potentially. I think that they can definitely add more wings to the rotation. Yeah, I think this is potential Jalen Tyson. Like he's high enough that I would consider making that move here. What do you see Tyson as? Because like I see him like I think he'll play a little bit like I think I have him written down as like a guard wing. What do you have him like? What do you see?
I think he's a wing.
A wing. Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask that is like I think a lot of people watch him play and they just put him as a guard because he played on ball so much at California. I don't think that's his role in the NBA. I think he's an off ball wing, potentially plays some two, maybe, but he plays off the ball and he's just an awesome second side, secondary creator in these lineups. And it would really come down to like, do you believe he can really shoot it and space the floor that way? And I think another thing with Tyson is going to be, do you think his defense is better when he doesn't have all of this on-ball usage? Because I always give these high-use on-ball usage guys that aren't going to play that role in the NBA, I give them a little bit of pass that their defense will be a little bit better. He's also built really well. That's why I buy into the defense.
I'd be inclined to believe that argument if he was a better defender at Texas Tech. And I didn't think he was bad at Texas Tech.
Okay, that's interesting. I haven't watched the Tech film. Was it not good defensively?
It was fine.
Okay.
I would say. He's not, I wouldn't say he was like a super plus defender. I wouldn't say he like hindered them.
Gotcha. Okay. That's better perspective.
But also like the Texas Tech situation was bad. Like he left Texas Tech because like Mark Adams, reportedly, according to Jalen Tyson, like racially vilified him or whatever it was. And all allegedlys and everything like that in the mix there, but like he might not have been in the best headspace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's go Salas here. Salas is the name that like ticks the most boxes to me in terms of scorer. I believe the shooting, athlete, mid-range game, can finish at the rim when he gets there, just doesn't get there a ton. Salas to me is the one that makes sense. And honestly, like effort on defense, like I liked Hunter Salas's like effort at least.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm cool with this. I don't know that we've mocked him yet in a first round, so I think it's time.
Yeah. Okay. Number 28, the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets tend to like older. This can be like a good Jalen Tyson spot potentially.
I'm cool with that.
The other name that I will bring up, who do we have left?
Teams wise?
Yeah, 29 and 30.
Utah and Boston.
Okay, let's put Tyson here, and there's one more name that I want to talk about.
Okay.
The Nuggets like to draft older. They like, veteran, players that might be able to come in immediately and play. They drafted 3 guys in Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, and Jalen Pickett last year that were older. Let's talk about this last guy here at 29. Pacome Daddier.
Yep.
Pacome Daddier.
Yep.
Actually.
Yep.
He is like a fast riser up the board.
Yep.
Teams are very enthusiastic about him when I talk to them. You've watched a decent amount of him, it sounds like, because I did the draft guide on him yesterday, and I'll kind of talk after you.
I watched full games early in the year and was kind of in like not sure. I did the tertiary dive more recently. So I'll read my little versatile forward, really nice intersection of size and skill with some potential higher upside based on his age and how raw his game is right now. The shooting numbers will not wow you. This was at the time. It's been better recently, but I think the form looks decent and something I can really buy into. Off the ball player who's ideally able to attack closeouts and then good instincts with cuts and offensive rebounding. Defensively, the tools are there to offer a ton of versatility, but it has to really come together. And I think what I told you, Sam, to me, it is activity without a plan, which isn't a huge negative, but I don't know if it doesn't have a plan because he is young, lacks awareness, or something else.
I think he's like horrific on defense. I have not seen a player with that much length and like potential, like size and everything to be an okay defender whose tape I liked less on defense in a while.
Yeah.
I don't think he knows what he's doing out there. Like he's very hesitant in terms of his rotations. He is not in any way, shape, or form disruptive. Doesn't use his frame well at all. Like very, like so not physical Like doesn't play with his frame at all. Like doesn't get his chest in front or anything. Drives me crazy. I don't get it, and I don't really want to mock him anywhere here. But I feel like he is a necessary person to name. I also didn't like the pass. He is basically a scoring only player. He is a non-passer, really doesn't make high level reads, doesn't rebound the ball, and doesn't defend. He is an awesome scorer.
Yeah.
Like I completely buy the scoring. I think he will shoot it. I'm so glad you brought up like the cutting off ball, like the movement off the ball. I think he has like a really natural feel for how to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. I just don't think he does anything else, unfortunately.
Yeah. I mean, he is someone who I had mid second round, late second round, that's in this tier we're talking about now. And again, how I do my big board is it's an intersection of my own thoughts, what little intel I do here, and just kind of what you feel like if there's real conversation that he's rising, at the end of the day, like my board needs to reflect that. Like my board is not just a completely my thoughts only. And so he is only as high as what he is because it's like, hey, this is the conversation he's in, with the caveat that I'm with you. Like this is a guy I'm more comfortable taking in the second round than even here at the end of the first. And some people have him way higher.
I liked Furphy a little bit more.
Sure.
Than him. I think we go Furphy here.
That's fine with me.
Furphy's, just as big. I think he will also shoot. He is also a real cutter. And I just like the attitude better on defense. Like Furphy is not a good defender right now. Like
we said it all year. He wants to, he's just not good at it right now.
Yeah. No, I'm with that. Let's go Furphy. And then at number 30, we have the Boston Celtics.
Yeah. We don't have to take him this time. We can take somebody else.
I'm not opposed to it. Like, I'm not opposed to taking Peyton Sandford here. I'm not opposed to taking Alex Caravan here.
Yeah.
The thing is that if you're taking somebody for the Celtics, it has to be somebody that shoots, because that's the thing that they care about. Like, it has to be somebody that shoots the ball.
And it's the same conversation we have every time. Caravan, Sanford, Shireman all make a ton of sense. And I think for people, it's going to come down to, who do you think is the best shooter? Who do you think does some of the other stuff better? Like you talked about Shireman and his rebounding. I talked to a scout recently who really likes Shireman's physicality, like just his build and how strong he is. And I'm like, you know what? That's fair. I understand that. I default Peyton Sandford every time in this scenario, simply because I do think he's the best shooter and the best floor spacer, and I buy it the most. I think ultimately in this role, that's what matters the most. But again, like I'm okay if we want to go like Caravan or Shireman just to switch things up a little bit. I got my little Peyton Sandford love in there. So I'm good with whatever we decide to do.
Let's go.
Caravan needs some love. The other thing is, do you think, I know we're higher than media consensus on Shireman. I think both of us are. Would you agree? Like based off?
Yeah, but not much higher than teams.
That's okay.
The impression I've gotten is Shireman's like a top 40 guy.
Yeah.
For teams.
Yep.
And I've gotten I don't know if Caravan's in this draft. Like there's a real chance he goes back to Connecticut. Man. There's a real chance he goes back to Connecticut.
Him and Liam McNeely together on the wing would be a lot of fun.
Be amazing. Be absolutely incredible. I like Caravan a little bit more than I like Shireman.
Sure.
Let's go Alex Caravan.
I'm cool with, because I'm also like, I would have Sanford 1, then Caravan, then Shireman, to be clear. I'm a little bit lower on Shireman. The more I watch, like just kind of the way he got his buckets and stuff kind of turned me off just a little bit, but I think he's good. I think he's a top 40 guy, like you said.
What I like about Caravan is, yes, he's like a 39, 40% 3-point shooter, right? Beyond that, I think he's an outstanding team defender.
Sure.
Like has real length. He has like a 7-foot wingspan or so. Like it's going to be in that ballpark. He is a monster on the weak side defensively. He is like, okay, guarding on the ball, but I think that more than anything, he's just a really, really good defender and team player that will just fit within this like Boston scheme perfectly. But Sandford also fits here. Like you've brought me around on Peyton Sandford in a real way.
Well, and here's where I think, and listen, here's what's nice, Sam. We get combine measurements and stuff tomorrow. We get fives on Tuesday and Wednesday or something like we start to see some of this stuff play out a little bit moving forward. We'll start to get intel on workouts, all of that stuff. I think where I'm a little higher on Samford than most is I think he does a lot of the intangible things pretty well also. I do think he rebounds. I do think he understands team defense. Like, does he have the same size to be the low man rim protector as Caravan? Maybe not, but I think he'll be in the right spots and hold up in those ways. But like, listen, like I take this time to give my Peyton Samford love, but I also I really like Alex Caravan. I think Caravan is very much a first round pick as well.
Yeah, no. So let's run through. We went SAR 1. We went, we go Topic 2, Reed Shepherd 3, Rizichet 4, Modest 5, Castle 6, Connect 7, Rob Dillingham 8, Donovan Clingan 9, Ron Holland 10, Cody Williams 11, Kyle Filipowski 12, Jared McCain 13, Tijon Saloon 14, Devin Carter 15, Isaiah Collier 16, Tristan DeSilva 17, Deron Holmes 18, Jacoby Walter 19, Bub Carrington 20, Zach Eady 21, Eve Missy 22, Tyler Kolek 23, Ryan Dunn 24, Tyler Smith 25, Khalil Ware 26, Hunter Salas 27, Jalen Tyson 28, Johnny Furphy 29, Alex Caravan there at 30. Couple of quick little notes here, let's say, because you have to run, because you have to do Pistons Pulse.
Yeah, I got Pistons in about 10 minutes. Yep.
Okay. Best players remaining on my board were Bobby Klintman, Jamal Shedd, Baylor Shireman, AJ Johnson, Keyshawn George, et cetera, et cetera. And then Sanford's pretty close to that range as well.
Yep. That's you, Keyshawn George, Peyton Samford, Klintman, Shireman, AJ Johnson. Yeah. A lot of the same guys. And then to get into Oso Ighodaro and then some guys like that. So, yep.
And I like Oso. It was the lack of rebounding is a real worry for me with Oso. Damn it 81 asks for a Raptors bonus pick at number 31. Who did we take for the Raptors? We took Jacoby Walter at 19. So what, that'd be a big, potentially, or a floor spacer or something like that. Keyshawn George would line up for them in some respect, I think.
Is Bakum a guy that goes there?
Bobby Klintman.
Klintman. Yeah, Klintman makes a lot of sense too. Yep. Yeah. And that could be an Oso spot if they wanted to go with a big.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. Okay. I think that's all we got here, Bryce.
Perfect.
I think that's all we got. Do you have anything exciting that you want to bring up here before we go?
No, I guess if you want some Pistons specific, if you still are, we're going to talk NBA draft for the first 40 minutes of the Pistons pod about all the guys at the top. So if you want some more of that, we're going to go live over on the Detroit Free Press YouTube in about 10 minutes. I have scouts, follow me on Twitter and you can get all my different scouts, and I've done some mocks on my own and some stuff like that. You can see that stuff. But no, here's the other thing, Sam, we missed it. The Knicks got torched by 30.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, and I think it was the whole game. I think they were down 25 at the end of the first quarter, and then it just stayed.
They're just really beat up right now, man.
If they end up losing this series, I think there's going to be some real conversations around, okay, what type of injuries were they? Why did they happen? Does this kind of play 5-6 guys work? I mean, people are probably.
Oh man, we had 13 Daquan Jeffries minutes. We had Jericho Sims 16 minutes.
Oh goodness.
Alec Burks led them in scoring. What the fuck happened here? Yeah. Holy shit.
Mm-hmm.
This is almost. Jarris Walker played 9 minutes tonight. Kendall Brown played 10 minutes.
I think it was almost 40 when I looked at one point. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this. I thought the ESPN thing I came across said that it was the biggest first quarter deficit in I don't know if it was Knicks playoff history or playoff history in general or what. It was like 25 at the end of the first, I think.
It was 38 at the end of the third. So
goodness gracious. Hey, here's the thing. We
goodness.
sneaky are getting into like we could have 2-2 Nuggets Wolves after tonight. Like all of these series may end up going 6-7 if the right teams win the next couple. So
we need time to do draft stuff. That's the thing. Like we like to do draft stuff on this channel. We prefer it if we can do it. But we also need time to be able to talk about the playoffs. And we're going to talk about the playoffs probably on Tuesday.
Hey, here's the other thing. Like we're getting way behind on our off-season previews as well. I mean, I know the end of June, is a ways off, but we've had quite a few teams get knocked out since we've done those. So we got some work to do.
Might have to do off-season previews maybe on Thursday, depending on what happens with the playoffs. Yeah, we'll figure that out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
The other thing is I have to write like 20,000 more words this week because I'm like pretty close on draft guide. Where if I can knock this out, it'd be like a month earlier than where I typically knock it out, and will give us like actual time to like really get into some fun draft stuff throughout the process. So that's the plan. Go to The Athletic. I have a mock draft up there right now.
Awesome.
It is already up in terms of like predicting where we're at. Different than Bryce's and I, like we went like kind of off the top trying to figure it out. My mock at The Athletic is based on like intel and kind of what I know and everything like that. So go there, keep me employed over there. Bryce has Pistons Pulse here in 5 minutes. So go listen to Bryce. I have other stuff coming assuredly. I have no idea how the Knicks lost by 32 points.
By the way, thanks for waking up so early. I don't know that the listeners realize how early you woke up because after the last recording,
4 a.m.
when I told you what time the lottery was, I won't say what you said, but it was not nice. So
yeah, I made
a lot of curse words. a lot of curse words.
Extensively. There was a lot of cursing there when I found out that they moved the draft to 3 p.m. What is this like? Is this like some stuff where the league just did not care about this draft and they were like, yeah, let's try something. Let's go crazy here. Get this shit back in prime time.
Hey,
like for the love of God.
I feel like it was good for the recording here. I feel like we had good engagement. We had good people tuned in. And like you always tell them, go hit the like button, go hit the subscribe button. Make sure you come back and listen to the next episode.
I'm going back to sleep, guys. Like, good luck.
I'm going to have a great supper and eat some crumble cookies for dessert. I'm excited. It's going to be a good night.
Man. My goodness. All right. Keep it locked here. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.